My anniversary party exposed her fraud. I invited 3 men she groomed, finally revealed the scam, filed for divorce, and watched her empire collapse. I slammed the phone against the wall. 3 years of marriage shattered in an instant, just like that screen. What I discovered wasn't just a betrayal. It was an elaborate scheme that made me question everything. I'd never considered myself the jealous type. When she forgot her phone at home that morning and it kept buzzing with notifications, I almost ignored it. Almost. The message preview caught my eye. "Can't wait to see you at the anniversary party. Maybe we can sneak away like old times." My hands trembled as I unlocked her phone, knowing her password hadn't changed since our first date. What I found was worse than any nightmare. 3 separate conversation threads with 3 different men. Each one addressed her with intimate nicknames. Each one reminisced about past relationships, and each one believed they had a special invitation to our upcoming anniversary celebration. I should have confronted her immediately. A weaker man might have. Instead, I took photos of everything, locked the phone, and placed it exactly where she'd left it. Then I called in sick to work and drove to the only person who could help make sense of this, a private investigator I'd used before for corporate background checks. "This is beyond standard infidelity," he said after reviewing the messages. "She's running a con on all of you." Over the next week, his findings painted a disturbing picture. These weren't random affairs. They were calculated manipulations. All 3 men were ex-boyfriends she'd maintained contact with throughout our marriage. She'd convinced each that they were the only special friend from her past, dangling the possibility of rekindling their relationships while extracting money, gifts, and favors. The investigator showed me transaction records, secret email accounts, and surveillance photos of meetings at cafes and hotels. "She's telling them you're having marital problems," he explained, "that your anniversary party might be the last event before a separation. Each one thinks they're being positioned to comfort her afterward." What struck me hardest wasn't the betrayal. It was the cold precision. These men weren't just victims of opportunity. They had been selected and groomed, kept in rotation like planets orbiting her sun, never allowed to cross paths or compare notes. "What's your move?" the investigator asked as we sat in his dimly lit office, surrounded by evidence of my collapsing marriage. I stared at the photos spread across his desk. 3 different men, all believing they were special, all being played like chess pieces by the woman who had promised to love only me. I thought about confronting her, demanding answers, filing for divorce immediately. But those were reactive moves. Predictable. "I need someone who understands the law," I said finally. "Not just divorce law. Someone who knows how to handle fraud, financial deception, and contractual breaches." The investigator leaned back, a slight smile forming. "Actually, I know exactly who you need." That evening, when she returned home, I greeted her with a kiss as if everything was normal. When she mentioned she'd invited some old friends to our anniversary celebration, I nodded enthusiastically. "That sounds great," I said, watching her eyes for any sign of guilt. There was none. "I might invite someone too," I added. "An old friend from college who's in town." "Of course," she replied, clearly relieved at my easy agreement. The more the merrier. She had no idea that her elaborate house of cards was about to collapse. My old friend was actually the most ruthless lawyer in the state, and he was already working on the documents that would end not just our marriage but her entire charade. The anniversary party she was so eagerly planning would definitely be a night to remember, just not for the reason she expected. Living under the same roof with someone plotting against you requires a special kind of discipline. For the next 3 weeks, I maintained the perfect facade, attentive husband by night, strategic planner by day. Every morning after she left for work, I'd meet with either the investigator or my newfound ally, the lawyer who would become her worst nightmare. The first time I walked into his office downtown, I knew I'd made the right choice. While other attorneys occupied spaces designed to comfort clients, his workplace felt like a war room, case files stacked with precision, walls featuring news clippings of his most devastating victories. No false promises of painless resolutions. "Your wife isn't just cheating," he said after reviewing the evidence. "She's committing fraud on multiple fronts." He wasn't wrong. The investigator had uncovered a labyrinth of deception. One ex-boyfriend had loaned her $15,000 for a business venture that didn't exist. Another was paying for a private health insurance policy she didn't need. The third had added her as an authorized user on his credit cards, which she regularly maxed out with purchases she kept hidden from me. "What's most impressive is how she's kept them separated," the lawyer noted, spreading surveillance photos across his mahogany desk. "These men have been in the same city for years, without ever realizing they're all being played by the same woman. I watched as he methodically documented each transgression, building what he called an airtight case of contractual and moral breach. "We're not just preparing for a divorce," he explained. "We're constructing a comprehensive legal trap. The anniversary party provides the perfect stage for resolution." Meanwhile, at home, I observed her with newfound clarity, the constant checking of multiple chat apps, the separate phone I discovered hidden in her car, the work meetings that conveniently fell on days when her credit card showed charges at upscale hotels. What once might have crushed me now only strengthened my resolve. "The invitations look beautiful," I told her one evening, as she showed me the embossed cards for our anniversary celebration. "How many guests are we expecting?" "Just 30 or so," she replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Mostly family and close friends." I nodded, knowing that among those close friends were 3 different men, each believing they had a special invitation to witness the beginning of the end of my marriage. I confirmed with my college friend, I mentioned casually. "He's looking forward to meeting everyone." Her response was automatic, the practiced interest of someone with other priorities. "That's nice. What does he do again?" "He's in conflict resolution," I answered truthfully, if incompletely. "Very good at sorting out complicated situations." The lawyer was indeed exceptional at resolving conflicts, though usually through devastating courtroom victories rather than peaceful negotiations. He had spent the past 2 weeks constructing what he called a legal guillotine, a series of documents detailing every aspect of her fraudulent behavior, complete with evidence that would stand up in any court. "The key," he advised during our final planning meeting, "is timing and audience. We'll present evidence not just to you and her, but to everyone she's been manipulating. Maximum impact, maximum consequences." I agreed, but added one crucial modification to his plan. The 3 ex-boyfriends shouldn't know about each other beforehand. They need to discover the full extent of her manipulation simultaneously. He smiled approvingly, psychological shock combined with legal consequences. "I like your thinking." 2 days before the anniversary, I received a text from the investigator confirming all 3 men had RSVP'd affirmatively. They would all be there, each one expecting some dramatic announcement that would pave the way for their reunion with my wife. The night before our anniversary, she suggested a toast to 3 wonderful years together. I clinked glasses with her, watching as she drank champagne I had paid for while wearing jewelry purchased with another man's credit card. "To truth and consequences," I said. She smiled, mistaking my words for romantic sentiment rather than the promise they actually were. In less than 24 hours, the elaborate world of lies she had constructed would collapse spectacularly around her, and I would be there alongside my lawyer friend to witness every moment of her downfall. The morning of our anniversary celebration arrived with an atmosphere of electric tension, at least for me. She seemed almost giddy, constantly checking her phone and making last-minute arrangements with the caterers. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was ensuring everything would be perfect for her own public undoing. I slipped away mid-morning for a final briefing with my lawyer at a coffee shop 3 towns over. No chances of accidental encounters with anyone who might be attending that night's event. "We've uncovered something significant," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "Your wife hasn't just been manipulating these men emotionally and financially. She's been committing actual crimes." The folder contained bank statements, showing she had established joint investment accounts with 2 of the ex-boyfriends, using fabricated business proposals as bait. She had diverted over $30,000 from our household accounts as supposed matching investments, then transferred most of the combined funds to offshore accounts only she could access. "This crosses into criminal territory," the lawyer explained, his voice low despite the empty tables surrounding us. "Wire fraud, tax evasion, possibly even identity theft, since she forged one ex's signature on several documents." I stared at the papers, a cold fury building inside me. "She used our anniversary celebration fund for this." He nodded grimly. "The vacation you thought you were saving for? It's been systematically drained over the past 8 months. Something shifted in me then. The last remnant of emotional attachment burned away, replaced by steely determination. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about justice. "How does this change our approach tonight?" I asked. "It amplifies it," he replied, straightening his already immaculate tie. "I've prepared documents not just for divorce proceedings, but for criminal complaints that can be filed immediately. The 3 exes need to understand they're not just victims of a cheating partner. They're potential CO complainants in a fraud case." We spent the next hour refining our strategy for maximum impact. The lawyer would arrive fashionably late. After all three exes were present, I would maintain absolute composure throughout, no matter what accusations or emotional appeals she might attempt. "Remember," he cautioned as we parted, "she's excellent at manipulation. When cornered, she'll likely try to turn others against you, claim you're mentally unstable, or manufacture some emergency to escape accountability. Stay centered." I returned home to find the house transformed with anniversary decorations, white roses, silver streamers, and enlarged wedding photos, creating a shrine to a marriage that existed only for show. The caterers bustled about preparing elegant appetizers while she supervised from the kitchen island, champagne already in hand despite the early hour. "Everything looks amazing," I told her with genuine appreciation. The more spectacular the setting, the more dramatic her fall would be. "Only the best for us," she replied, kissing my cheek. 3 years deserves a proper celebration." I wondered briefly which version of herself she planned to present tonight: devoted wife to me, prospective new partner to the exes, or some hybrid character only she fully understood. Her capacity for compartmentalization was almost admirable in its pathological perfection. By late afternoon, I retreated to our bedroom under the pretense of getting ready, instead using the time to review the extensive evidence compiled against her: photos of clandestine meetings with each ex, financial records showing systematic fraud, text messages promising each man a special announcement at tonight's party. My phone buzzed with a text from the lawyer, all pieces in position. "Ready when you are." Another message came from the investigator, all 3 targets confirmed en route. ETA 30 minutes, staggered as planned. I dressed methodically in my best suit, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes that the lawyer had specifically recommended for its authoritative appearance. "Dress not for the marriage you're ending," he'd advised, "but for the victory you're claiming." Downstairs, the first guests were arriving: her parents, my sister, mutual friends from work and college, all unwitting audience members for the final act of a marriage built on deception. She appeared beside me in a stunning red dress, playing the role of devoted wife with Oscar-worthy precision. "Happy anniversary, darling," she whispered, her smile beaming while her eyes remained calculating. "Tonight is going to be unforgettable." On that point, at least, we were in perfect agreement. I checked my watch. 20 minutes until the first ex-boyfriend would arrive, followed by the others at carefully orchestrated intervals. "By the way," I said casually, "my college friend just texted. He's running slightly late, but he'll definitely be here." "The conflict resolution guy?" she asked absently, her attention already drifting to the door as the doorbell rang. "Yes," I answered, moving toward the entrance. "And tonight he's going to resolve quite a lot." The first ex-boyfriend arrived precisely at 7:15 p.m. I recognized him immediately from the surveillance photos: tall, with a tech executive's confidence, and an expensive watch that matched the credit card statements showing her recent purchases. His gift was wrapped in silver paper with an oversized bow, overcompensating in a way that only someone with false hope would. "So glad you could make it," I greeted him warmly, watching confusion flash across his face as I extended my hand. "Any friend of my wife is welcome at our celebration." He recovered quickly, mumbling something about old friendship while scanning the room for her. When she spotted him, the performance began. She approached with carefully calibrated familiarity, friendly enough to maintain appearances, intimate enough to sustain his delusions. "You remember my college friend," she told me, her hand lingering slightly too long on his arm. "He's been so supportive of my charity projects." I nodded pleasantly, knowing the charity in question was actually her offshore account. "We're grateful for your support," I said, raising my glass in his direction. The mix of guilt and anticipation on his face was almost pitiful. 20 minutes later, the second ex arrived, a fitness trainer whose gym membership she'd been expensing to our joint account while meeting him for private sessions. He brought no gift but carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed he was about to reclaim something lost. The momentary panic in her eyes when she realized both exes were now in the same room was worth every second of the charade I'd maintained for weeks. "Darling," she said, suddenly at my side, voice pitched slightly too high, "the caterers need direction about the main course timing." A tactical retreat. I allowed it, watching as she pulled the second ex into the kitchen under that pretense, presumably to establish ground rules for the evening. Meanwhile, the first ex stood awkwardly near our wedding photos, checking his phone with increasing frequency. My sister approached me, champagne in hand. "Something feels off tonight," she whispered. Is everything okay? Just wait, I replied cryptically. The real celebration hasn't even started. By 8:10 p.m., most of the planned guests had arrived, creating the perfect cover of social noise. The third ex-boyfriend made his entrance, a financial advisor who'd been managing investments that existed only in falsified documents she'd created. He brought the most ostentatious gift, a package that couldn't possibly contain anything other than jewelry. The choreography that followed was fascinating to witness. She worked the room in concentric circles, keeping the three men separated through deliberate introductions to other guests. Each received whispered promises and meaningful glances when she thought no one was watching. Each was positioned strategically at different parts of the house. The psychological manipulation was masterful. Had I not been aware of the scheme, I might have admired the social dexterity. My phone vibrated with a text from the lawyer, outside. Ready when you signal. I responded, wait 10 minutes. Let the scene fully develop. Those 10 minutes were surreal. I moved through our anniversary party like a visitor in a living museum of deception. Guests congratulated us on 3 years of marriage, unaware they were witnesses to its calculated destruction. The three exes circled like sharks, each believing they alone had been invited to witness some imminent relationship collapse that would benefit them. She grew increasingly frantic, though only I could recognize the signs. The slightly too frequent bathroom visits, the compulsive phone checking, the way she kept glancing at the door as though expecting someone else. Her careful arrangement was threatening to unravel as the exes began to notice each other's unusual interest in their hostess. At one point, I observed the first and third ex engaged in awkward conversation near the drinks table, each clearly trying to determine the other's connection to my wife. The second ex had positioned himself with a direct line of sight to her at all times, his possessive stare becoming noticeable to other guests. Her parents approached me, champagne flutes in hand. Such a beautiful celebration, her mother said, oblivious to the undercurrents of tension. You two are perfect together. The irony was almost painful. Actually, I replied, we've had some interesting developments recently. I'll be making an announcement about that shortly. As I finished speaking, the doorbell rang. The familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my chest, then dissolved into calm certainty. This was the moment everything would change. I'll get it, I announced, loud enough for her to hear from across the room. She froze mid-conversation, eyes darting between the three exes and the door. For the first time that evening, genuine fear replaced calculation in her expression. She started moving toward the entrance, but the crowd of well-wishers slowed her progress. I opened the door to reveal my lawyer, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that exuded authority. He carried nothing but a slim leather portfolio, the type used for important legal documents. Sorry I'm late, he said, voice projecting enough to draw attention. Traffic was terrible. You're right on time, I assured him, leading him into the center of the room. In fact, I think we're ready for that announcement now. Her desperate attempt to intervene was blocked by guests eager to hear what the host had to say. The three exes shifted uncomfortably, each believing the announcement might concern them specifically. Nobody noticed as the lawyer quietly placed his portfolio on the side table and opened it to reveal meticulously organized documents. I tapped a spoon against my champagne glass, producing the clear ring that traditionally signals a toast. Conversations halted. All eyes turned toward me. Thank you all for coming to celebrate 3 years of what many of you believed was a happy marriage, I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Before we continue this evening, I'd like to introduce my special guest, one of the state's foremost attorneys specializing in fraud, contractual breaches, and criminal financial misconduct. The silence that followed was deafening, her face drained of color as understanding dawned. The lawyer stepped forward, his expression pleasantly neutral despite the bomb he was about to detonate. Good evening, everyone, he said smoothly. I have some rather interesting documents to share with all of you, especially with these three gentlemen who were invited here under false pretenses. The lawyer moved with the calculated precision of a surgeon, placing 3 separate folders on the dining table that had been decorated with our wedding photos. First, he announced to the stunned room, I should clarify why we're all really here tonight. This isn't just an anniversary celebration. It's an intervention into a sophisticated fraud scheme that has victimized multiple people in this room. Her attempt to interrupt was masterfully deflected. Please hold your objections, the lawyer said with a smile that never reached his eyes. You'll have your opportunity to respond to the evidence. That's more consideration than you gave any of your victims. He turned toward the three ex-boyfriends, who had instinctively moved closer to hear what was happening. Gentlemen, allow me to make some introductions. You've all been romantically involved with the hostess, not just in the past, but continuing through her marriage. Each of you believed you were the only special friend being positioned to replace her husband after an imminent separation. The room erupted into murmurs as guests processed this revelation. Her parents exchanged horrified glances. My sister placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. That's ridiculous, she finally managed to interject, her voice unnaturally high. These are old friends. My husband is having some kind of breakdown. Exhibit A, the lawyer continued seamlessly, opening the first folder and removing a stack of documents protected in clear sleeves. Text messages between the hostess and each gentleman spanning the past 2 years. You'll note the consistent patterns of romantic promises, discussions of a future together, and strategic requests for financial assistance. He handed copies to each ex-boyfriend. The color drained from their faces as they scanned the pages, then looked at each other with dawning comprehension. You told me I was the only one you stayed in contact with, the financial advisor said, his professional composure cracking. He's twisting things, she insisted, desperation evident in her voice. Those messages are being taken out of context. Context is precisely what we're establishing, the lawyer replied, opening the second folder. Exhibit B, financial records documenting systematic fraud against all 4 men in this room, including her husband. With clinical detachment, he outlined how she had extracted over $87,000 from the 3 ex-boyfriends combined through fabricated investment schemes and false emergencies, how she had diverted nearly $42,000 from our joint accounts to offshore holdings, how she had maintained separate credit cards, banking profiles, and even a second phone dedicated to managing her elaborate deceptions. The tech executive stepped forward, face flushed with anger. The Business Accelerator program, the one you needed $20,000 for emergency funding, never existed. The lawyer confirmed those funds were transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands, along with similar investments from the others. The fitness trainer looked physically ill. The medical treatments for your mother. Her mother has excellent health insurance and has not been hospitalized in the past decade, the lawyer stated flatly. Throughout this systematic dismantling of her scheme, I maintained perfect composure, watching as her face cycled through shock, outrage, calculation, and finally, desperate improvisation. This is all a misunderstanding, she attempted, voice breaking with what might have passed for genuine emotion to anyone who hadn't studied her patterns. I can explain everything if you'll just… Perhaps you'd like to explain these, the lawyer interjected, opening the third folder to reveal surveillance photographs documenting her meetings with each man, in cafes, hotels, and once, remarkably, all 3 on the same day at different locations. Or maybe you'd care to address the falsified documents carrying forged signatures. Those are of particular interest to the district attorney's office. The room had fallen into shocked silence. Even those guests unconnected to the scheme seemed unable to process the methodical exhibition of betrayal unfolding before them. She made one last desperate attempt, turning toward me with tears streaming down her face. Please, she begged, whatever you think I've done, we can work through this. Don't throw away 3 years of marriage without hearing my side. For the first time that evening, I addressed her directly, my voice calm and controlled. I've spent the past month hearing your side, not from you, but from your own messages, bank records, and the separate lives you've been living. There's nothing left to explain. I turned to the lawyer, who nodded and produced a final document from his portfolio. This, he announced, is the petition for divorce, already filed with the county court yesterday morning. Given the extensive documentation of fraud, the judge has granted an emergency hearing and temporary freeze on all joint assets pending resolution. Her parents had moved to the far corner of the room, her mother openly weeping, while her father stared in disbelief. Most of the other guests were discreetly gathering their belongings, eager to escape the implosion of what had appeared to be a perfect marriage. The 3 ex-boyfriends, however, remained rooted in place, united for the first time by their shared victimization. There's more, the lawyer continued, addressing them directly. Each of you has grounds for civil complaints to recover fraudulently obtained funds. Additionally, the financial structures she created potentially violated several banking regulations and tax laws. My office has prepared initial documentation should you wish to pursue these matters. He handed each man a business card with remarkable timing. just as she made a desperate lunge toward the front door, 2 steps from potential escape. She found her path blocked by the investigator, who had been documenting her activities for weeks. He hadn't been introduced as part of our team. Instead, he had posed as a catering staff member throughout the evening. "Going somewhere?" he asked pleasantly, holding up his phone displaying yet another incriminating photo of her with one of the exes. She froze, suddenly aware that every avenue of escape, physical, legal, and emotional, had been systematically cut off. The careful compartmentalization that had allowed her to maintain multiple realities simultaneously had collapsed, leaving her exposed on all fronts. "I suggest you remain for the duration of this discussion," the lawyer advised her. "Attempting to flee now would only compound your difficulties with law enforcement." As the full implications of her situation became clear, she sank into the nearest chair, the carefully constructed mask of control finally crumbling completely. The lawyer turned to address the room at large. "I apologize for the disruption to what many of you believed was a celebration. However, sometimes justice requires uncomfortable moments of truth. Anyone wishing to provide statements regarding their interactions with this situation may do so through my office." He then turned to me, his professional demeanor softening slightly. "The car is waiting whenever you're ready, unless you prefer some private words with your soon-to-be ex-wife." I considered the woman sitting before me, the stranger I'd been married to for 3 years, and found nothing more needed to be said. The meticulous evidence, the shocked faces of her multiple victims, and the utter collapse of her manipulative scheme spoke volumes more than any words I could add. "No," I replied firmly. "I think the documentation speaks for itself." The aftermath of that night unfolded with the precision of a well-orchestrated legal strategy. While most divorces drag on for months or years, mine was finalized in record time, exactly 43 days after our anniversary party. The overwhelming evidence of fraud, coupled with the criminal implications, eliminated any leverage she might have used to prolong proceedings. I moved into a downtown apartment the morning after the party. The lawyer had arranged everything: security deposit paid, essential furniture delivered, even the refrigerator stocked. "Consider it part of my service package," he explained. "Clients facing significant transition need practical support, not just legal advice." That practical approach defined everything that followed. While she desperately scrambled to salvage what she could, we methodically dismantled every aspect of her scheme. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, granted me 85% of our assets, citing her unprecedented pattern of fraudulent behavior within the marital contract. Her parents, shell-shocked by the revelations, made no attempt to contact me. According to mutual friends, they had cut financial ties with their daughter and were quietly consulting attorneys about their own potential liability, having unknowingly vouched for some of her fictitious business ventures. The 3 ex-boyfriends pursued separate but parallel paths. The tech executive, most concerned with professional reputation, settled quickly and privately, accepting a partial repayment plan in exchange for confidentiality. The fitness trainer, whose finances had been most severely impacted, filed both civil and criminal complaints, determined to recover every dollar. Most interesting was the financial advisor's response. During the legal proceedings, he revealed that he had harbored suspicions about her activities for months but had been repeatedly manipulated into doubting his own judgment. "She had a particular talent for making you question your perception of reality," he explained during his deposition. "Even with direct evidence, she could convince you that you were misinterpreting something obvious." His testimony proved pivotal when she attempted to claim diminished capacity due to psychological distress. The court-appointed psychiatrist identified not distress, but a textbook pattern of calculated manipulation and an absence of empathy that had allowed her to compartmentalize multiple fraudulent relationships simultaneously. 3 months after the anniversary party, I met the lawyer for dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. My invitation, my choice of venue. No longer a client, I wanted to thank him properly for engineering not just my legal victory but my complete extraction from a relationship that would have eventually destroyed me. "Most people in your situation react emotionally first," he observed as we waited for our meals. "They confront immediately, demand explanations, give the manipulator time to construct new deceptions. Your restraint was exceptional." "I had exceptional counsel," I replied, raising my glass in acknowledgement. He smiled slightly, the same measured expression I'd seen him use in formal settings. "How are things at the new firm?" I asked. I had accepted a position with a competing company immediately after the divorce filing, another strategic move he had recommended to establish complete financial separation, challenging in the right ways, fresh start, fresh perspective. And personally, the question wasn't intrusive coming from someone who had witnessed the most humiliating collapse of my personal life. Surprisingly good, I admitted. Once the shock wore off, I realized I'd been living with constant low-grade anxiety for years, always sensing something was wrong but never able to identify it. He nodded knowingly. The clarity that comes after extracting yourself from a manipulative relationship can be its own form of euphoria. Be careful about the inevitable crash that follows. You sound like you've seen this before. Hundreds of times, he confirmed, though few cases involve such elaborate schemes across multiple victims. Your ex-wife showed exceptional commitment to her deceptions. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of our server, followed by a news alert on both our phones simultaneously. The headline read, "Local woman indicted on multiple counts of fraud and financial crimes." Right on schedule, he noted, not bothering to check the details. We'd been expecting this development. The prosecutor had indicated charges would be filed this week. What we hadn't expected was the additional news that broke the following morning. She had fled the country overnight, using a passport registered under her mother's maiden name. According to preliminary reports, she had withdrawn funds from previously undiscovered accounts and disappeared hours before her scheduled surrender to authorities. This changes the optics but not the outcome, the lawyer assured me when I called him. The financial holds remain in place. Interpol will be notified. She's traded a potential 18-month sentence for international fugitive status. 2 days later, she was apprehended attempting to enter a small Caribbean nation with banking secrecy laws. The international implications elevated her case from local news to national headlines, complete with detailed exposés of her methodology and victims. By the 6-month mark after our anniversary party, her legal machinery had processed everything. She was serving a 5-year sentence after pleading guilty to reduced charges. The 3 ex-boyfriends had recovered varying percentages of their financial losses. Our house had been sold, the proceeds distributed according to the divorce settlement. Her offshore accounts had been located and frozen. The lawyer and I maintained contact, our professional relationship evolving into something resembling friendship. We met monthly for lunch, discussing everything from legal theory to baseball statistics. During one such meeting, he asked the question most people had carefully avoided. Do you ever regret not confronting her privately? Some might consider the public exposure unnecessarily harsh. I considered this carefully. If it had been only me she deceived, perhaps. But she built an entire ecosystem of manipulation, using each victim as leverage against the others. That required a systematic dismantling, not a private conversation. He nodded approvingly. The punishment fit the crime. It wasn't about punishment, I clarified. It was about consequence. There's a difference. 1 year after the anniversary party that ended my marriage, I received an unexpected letter forwarded through my attorney's office. Its origin was untraceable. The handwriting was familiar, the content predictable, claims of reformation, requests for understanding, promises of changed behavior. I read it once, then placed it in the shredder without response. The lawyer had taught me an invaluable lesson. Some bridges aren't meant to be repaired. Some people don't deserve second chances, and sometimes the most powerful statement is complete silence. That silence defined my victory. Not the legal wins, not the financial settlement, but the absolute refusal to engage with manipulation ever again. I had learned to recognize the red flags, to trust my instincts, and most importantly, to value myself enough to walk away from toxicity without explanation or apology. The 3 ex-boyfriends eventually connected through a support group for fraud victims. According to mutual connections, they formed an unlikely alliance, helping each other recognize manipulation patterns in future relationships. One even started a consultation service for others facing similar situations. As for me, I rebuilt methodically, new home, new job, new boundaries. When people asked about my marriage, I answered truthfully but briefly. It ended when I discovered it was built on lies. The lawyer continues his practice, occasionally referring to my case when teaching continuing education seminars on complex divorce strategy. We still meet monthly, now more friends than attorney and client. During our last dinner, he raised his glass in a subtle toast to bringing the right lawyer to an anniversary party. He said with the closest thing to humor I'd ever seen from him, I matched his gesture, adding my own conclusion, and to recognizing when the only winning move is to end the game completely. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.